でもお手当てをやめるわけにはいかない。私たちの世界を病原キングダムみたいにされちゃったら嫌だもん。
No joke here. I just want to say, I'm gonna miss this character when the series ends next month. Don't worry, we'll get to you at the end. We open this week with Shindoinen looking for her one true king while flashing back to their first meeting. Apparently, of all people, the king gave her the honor of seeing his true form. Yeah, pro tip lady, flashbacks are big death flags, just saying. We then cut over to Skoyaka where the Precure managed to make quick work of the Megas. A little understandable at this point in the series, but still it's a bit of a pity we couldn't see a little more. However, their work wasn't done. As it turned out, there was still a Giga on the loose that I failed to point out last week, my bad. Though I swear, I hear it saying Mega instead of Giga here. Am I going crazy or do I need a hearing aid? However, the official subtitle said Giga, so my fault for mostly sticking with the raws. In any case, Daisen reported to his king that the Precure managed to escape and were likely defeating his monsters, all the while said king was building his own castle. Dude, we all know you're about to die, so is this really the note you want to go out on? I'll give him this, at least he understands the importance of structural integrity. The Precure confronted the Giga, as well as Guaiwaru, whose head shrunk in this one cut. Yeah, don't take steroids, folks. But it didn't take long before they were overwhelmed by the arrival of Shindoinen and a certain stalker. This led to some impressive action for the most part. Some of the stuff did look a little lazy and too framey. Still, an overall good sequence that ended with the Precure all down and surrounded by their enemy. All look lost until... And with this delightful smile on Shindoinen, Guaiwaru finally got bad comedy out of the show, much to the shock of both the Precure and Daisen as the king was back and oh wow. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, that's a pretty boss design. I mean, he looks rightfully monstrous and very bestial, almost like a combination of noise and an evil unicorn. In fact, yeah, he kind of looks like an actually good MLP final boss. It just reminds me of how disappointing the big bads of those final seasons were. But yeah, as many of us predicted, the thing that Precure defeated was only a small portion of King Byogen. He knew that Guaiwaru would try to pull a Starscream and thus faked his own death, so that he would try to take over and in the process, further power up with some more mega parts. It was actually a pretty smart plan, as otherwise he would have had to wait until the infection of the Earth had reached a significant point. Nodoka, you're in a toy production. Of course the big bad is going to do something like this. It's practically in their contracts. I will say, while this still doesn't make this guy all that interesting of a big bad, at least now he has the air of a proper final boss. As such, he also managed to power up the Giga Byogen, forcing the Precure to retransform, mostly because they do have to go through this whole sequence at least once per episode. Regardless, at least we got another well-animated sequence that I'm guessing was compliments of our old friend Francis Kaneda. Francis seems to work best with animators like Joey Caligian, or more commonly, like with this episode, Alice Nario, whom they've worked with as far back as Powerpuff Girls Z. Maybe I should take a look at that sometime. Sadly, it was also a really short sequence, as the Precure just broke out the arrows and defeated it. In the process, the villains also managed to get away, even though they could probably get the Precure while they're tired, but again, this dude is a very stereotypical toy final boss, who always seems to give the protagonist about 1,000 opportunities. That said, I did kind of like the sequence of the Precure apologizing to their parents for disappearing during this whole hostile takeover of their town. Yeah, earlier in the episode, they actually showed the civilians having evacuated the town, thus giving us a good sense that an attack of this size actually had a significant effect on the everyday civilians. Of course, it also gave yet another reason for Nodoka to have a crying scene, because as some of my commenters have pointed out, this is just kind of a thing Aoyuki characters have to do, especially now that we're reaching the end of the show. Meanwhile, the Byogen Kingdom, the king did at least have some reason to retreat, and wait, is this dude on all fours, plus that long face? So wait, is he actually an evil pony? Then does that mean Shindoinen fell in love with a... You know what, never mind, let's not dig any further than that. Actually, he kind of looks like a dog, which matches up with his main enemy in Teatinu, but I'm gonna stick with the MLP jokes. So yeah, Sombra's next course of action was to absorb the entirety of his Crystal Kingdom, which of course included Darizen. Well, when you put it like that, he managed to escape and ran home, you could say.
お前は俺を育てた宿主だ。
お前は俺だ。
I swear, if the Doujishin artists don't make a crossover with Kamen Rider X8 soon, I will be sorely disappointed. But yeah, Anime Pardo was seeking refuge in his original host, as while he was a lazy bastard, he didn't want to give up his very existence to his boss. Though, understandably, all this talk about getting inside of her freaked Nodoka out, and we ended the episode with her running away as Darizen called her a hypocrite for leaving him to die. Jeez, there were enough twists in this one episode that would have made Shyamalan proud. Granted, I do wish it didn't come at the cost of action, as I wanted the fight for Skoyaka to last at least another half of an episode more or so. But, and I'm not gonna lie, that last twist has me kind of hooked, and if this show is going to go down the direction I think it is, then we could be in store for one hell of a finale. While the first big twist of the King's return here was predictable, even if you hadn't seen the episode titles like me, it didn't automatically make it bad, as what really mattered was of course the execution, which for the most part was handled well. We got some good lead up with a good fight beforehand, and just the looks of horror on Guaiwaru, Darizen, and the Precure, while Shidoine made this slasher smile, sold the scene really well. It's just a pity what followed didn't quite match up, as the Precure rather quickly defeated the King's Giga Byogen, which was on top of a lot of other short fights in this episode, and the dude himself just left, meaning that he spared the Precure twice in this one episode. Still, as sure as some of them were, at least we did get some decent fights this week, and more importantly, build up to Nodoka's final arc of the season. While she has absolutely every right to not heed Darizen's last words, especially considering how much of a creeper he was coming off as, the thing is, much like Emu and Pardo, the two might actually need each other, at least in order to defeat the king. Not to say he deserves Pardo's redemption at all, and in fact, this could lead into a truly gripping final battle between these two. And after seeing the fallout of their latest fight, Nodoka is now fully aware of all of the responsibilities she has to live up to, be it to her parents, her town, and even to Darizen to the extent that she does have to deal with him. If she truly wants to save everyone, she might have to sacrifice both her own happiness and perhaps even her own humanity. Before we end this week's video, I just wanted to take a quick little look at this slightly revised version of the poster for the upcoming spring movie. The upper half is obviously stuff we've already covered when we looked at the movie's website, but the lower half clearly has a lot more going on. First, the little detail that I totally predicted, the Dream Pendant is indeed going to be the new handout item at the cinemas replacing the Miracle Lights. They will have a light up feature much like the little glow sticks, but since most good kids are going to keep them around their neck, there likely isn't going to be the usual light waving. Which, you know, in this current environment is a bit of a necessary restriction. Again, like I said in the Miracle Leap review, I do feel kind of bad that the legacy of the Miracle Lights might have to end so abruptly like this, but still, safety comes first. Besides, I'd imagine this film is still going to have scenes of the characters encouraging the audience to wish on their little pendants, giving us our new immersion-breaking status quo. That'll be nice. Moving on to the slightly more significant announcement, apparently the new kids on the block, the Tropical Rouge team, are going to get their own special movie called the Tropical Rouge Precure Pucci Jump Into the Collab Dance Party. Now Pucci, if you're not familiar with the Idolmaster spin-off, means small, which in this case likely means a mini-movie. Yes, due to the misaligned movie schedules, again because of a certain global issue, Tropical Rouge is not likely going to get a full crossover film. So, as some form of consolation, they are at least going to get this mini-movie that, like many a Disney or even a couple of Precure films, is going to play right before the feature presentation. The fact that it has collab in the title means that some of the vets, likely Star Twinkle and Healin Good, are going to join in on this little dance party. Now, obviously, this isn't going to give the new team the same amount of exposure a full-on movie crossover would provide, but I think it is the best compromise they can do considering all the very complicated circumstances brought upon by this whole pandemic. If anything, I hope that the collabing seasons will at least give this new team the proper rub, and that these dances will at least be well choreographed. Don't just make sure everyone stays in their seats. Again, please, safety first, everyone. If you haven't seen it yet, I tried doing something a little different and reviewed a doujinshi or fan-made manga that crossed over two of my favorite franchises. And as unusual as having the Showa Kamen Riders fight the Precure might sound on paper, it works surprisingly well due in no small part to the author TG Type 1's fantastic art. Check it out if the concept at all interests you, or if you want to see a better version of Kamen Rider Tyson. Considering how well received that video was, I might do another doujinshi review in the near future, but until then though, farewell for now my friends, and ooh. Sounds like Emily and Powerdor are getting ready for a crossover. Get on that, TJ.